Welcome to Fear Less, Do More, the podcast where we dive into the minds of some extraordinary and fearless businesses and people who are challenging the status quo and who are helping to change the world of business around us. I'm your host, Gill Hunter. I'm the managing partner at Square One Law. On each episode, I'll be chatting to innovators, change makers and trailblazers, where we explore the unique journeys of our guests. We'll delve into the fears they've faced, the setbacks they've overcome, the lessons they've learned along the way. We'll uncover the secrets behind their resilience, and we'll find out what motivates them to keep going even in the face of adversity. We'll also have a few laughs along the way too. My guests are all leaders who relentlessly pursue their passions, not only to create a better tomorrow, but who inspire us to push our own boundaries, those who fear less and do more. Hi, and welcome to this episode of our podcast. Today I'm joined by Owain Brennan, and his business is SeerBi, but I'm not going to spoil it by telling you anything about that now. Owain, thank you for coming to talk with me today. SeerBi is a fascinating business to me.
Thank you.
What a combination, data science and maritime. Who would ever have thought those two things went together?
Yeah, I mean, that's the exact reason why we decided to put them both together maritime needs data science, and I mean, data science, I think, needs some learnings from maritime as well, so they work weirdly well together. That's what we found.
So how do you bring those two things together? Tell me about the business and what it does.
Yeah, so essentially we work with lots of different maritime operators, so be it ports, free ports, customs agents, recruitment specialists, everything that kind of work in the maritime sector. And what we've found is that specifically the maritime sector has a lot of data, because when you think about ships moving and cargo moving, there's every single piece of cargo has to have a bit of data attached to it, and actually every bit of cargo has a lot of data attached to it. But what we found, and kind of what I found when I was working in industry in maritime, was that all of this data was being tracked in things like Excel or all of your usual or text files, or these platforms that have been around for a long time, and the data wasn't being utilized. So it needed a data science aspect to it. It needed analyzing so we can speed up the whole process, because everyone knows the customs problems that happen in the UK, and a lot of those can be alleviated by just looking at the data and understanding it. So that's why we bring this different perspective into the maritime sector. And yeah, they work together really well. And I say from the data science side, data science is quite a new sector. Data as a thing has been around forever, but in terms of the artificial intelligence side and the data analysis, but because it's so new, it doesn't have a strong foundation, whereas when you look at maritime, that has a strong foundation, so we can take the learnings of a system that's been around for a long time and integrate it into a kind of data science aspect as well, so they really complement each other well. Yeah.
Fascinating. So you mentioned AI there. Obviously I'm really concerned that I'm not going to have a job in a couple of years' time, because everybody keeps telling me that the robots are going to take over. Is that true?
I'd like to think not. 2 years ago, I'd say, oh no, definitely not, that's ages away, but I think everyone kind of sees how fast it's advancing over the last even 2-3 weeks, with things like ChatGPT coming around at the start of 2023, and the advances that's already made with companies like Microsoft has bought a lot of OpenAI, who create ChatGPT. Since they bought shares in it, they have now very quickly started to integrate into Bing, and now new Bing is around, and that's even better than ChatGPT. And the pace of innovation within AI is something that kind of hasn't been seen before. So it's hard to predict how long it will take to get to a point where it's taking over a lot more jobs than it already currently is. But yeah, I think it depends on the sector you work in as well. Different sectors have to look at AI differently, but there's a lot of space in there for humans to work with AI, and that's where the real collaboration is going to be. You can have people like me building the AI, but I think workers need to find a way to work with the AI as well, because you're always going to need a human element to every business. It's impossible to get rid of that.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So how are you using AI in your business to drive growth?
Lots of different ways. So we have a lot of internal tools that we've developed. So most of these are around what we call the ETL process. So that's extract, transform, and loading data. And that's a really important part of any data analysis or data science or AI, is getting the extracting, so getting the data from something like Excel or text or from people, and transforming it into a system that we can use, and then loading that into something like an AI model that can teach it. So we have a lot of internal IP around that whole process, but then kind of tools that we've developed for ourselves is the kind of hidden secret of SeerBi is that all of our social media is AI generated.
Wow.
All of our blog
Cat's
posts
out
are
the bag
generated.
now.
Yeah, it's out the bag. It's no longer some people know. It's fine. People know for a while. Yeah. So one of the ways that we use AI internally is that we don't outsource any of our marketing. We don't have a marketing team. Instead, that's all AI generated. So things like blog posts, social media posts, and the descriptions, we fully just do them with AI now. And things like we even do templates for things like awards that we've submitted for. We essentially, and we have we've taken the model behind ChatGPT, which is GPT-3. We've taken that because we're a Microsoft partner, and also the GPT-3 itself is anyone can access it, anyone can get keys to it if you make an OpenAI account. So yeah, we've taken that model and we've introduced it to us as a company. So we've taught it a lot of data about our company, and so it means we can type in the word SeerBi and it knows everything about us essentially. So we don't have to. Whereas if you go to ChatGPT, each time you enter in the box or anything like that, you have to reteach it about you with every single chat. We don't have to do that. So we could just say, write a blog post about how SeerBi works in the maritime industry, and then it will generate the blog post. And then we have humans that then go through and check that and add the detail. But yeah, it helps us to get a lot of content out there, be a bit ahead of the game, and use the tools and develop with the tools that we're selling to maritime as well, which is good.
It raises lots of really interesting issues from a legal perspective as well. Who owns the IP in that? Is it the folk behind the AI tech, or is it the people who are making who are tinkering with it and produce it? Have you got any views on that?
Yeah, machine learning and AI has been great over the last few years with the fact that a lot of it's open source. So there's a load of open source work out there. There's an amazing site called Hugging Face, which is where most of Meta, Microsoft, Google, they post not their best models, but their best open source models onto there. And it means that anyone can go on and quickly get access to these kind of state-of-the-art models that we can retrain for specific use cases, be it image generation or classification of text or anything like that. So with that open source aspect and the complete open source licenses, it's interesting from an IP point of view of, okay, yeah, I'm now taking Meta's model, introducing it to my own data. And is that my model? Is that Meta's model? There hasn't been, that I've seen any cases so far of Meta then coming and saying that's my model, because there's currently no way of tracking that I know of. So it's an interesting one. But whenever we deploy to a customer, what we do is go from a complete open source point of view and ensure that the models that we're working with are open source, so that it is the client's IP at the end of the case. If that's the way that we're working with the client, is it's going to be their IP in the end. Because we do work with clients in different ways as well. We either work fully as a kind of agency and they own the IP that we develop for them, or we also can reduce our agency rates to be able to take some of that IP and keep it internally. We work together on a product or a solution. So yeah, we can work with IP in an interesting way with AI, but there is no precedent really for it yet. No. So yeah, it's an interesting one to work in.
It's interesting because I think there's a lot of myth around AI and machine learning. And I think when people explain it, it tends to be very tech-based explanations of things. Can you explain to me in 5 words what AI is?
It's just comparing numbers. I'd say it's all it is.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's all. It's just statistics when you get down to it. Which is what I've had a lot of conversations over the last few weeks about courses teaching AI. And a lot of the ones I've looked at, I won't name names, but a lot of the ones that I've worked with, they completely skip math. They don't teach math in it, or they don't even, when people apply for them, don't ask for a maths GCSE or anything like that. And I think that is dangerous because then when you're not actually learning machine learning or AI, then you're just learning how to use the tools that other people have built.
Right.
So I make sure the data analysts and the machine learning engineers that we hire have a strong mathematical foundation. The best machine learning engineers kind of come from physics because they understand the raw math of the universe, so it kind of translates quite well into AI. But yeah, there's this dangerous point right now in courses teaching AI where they don't actually just teach the math that is the foundation to all of it, which is, again, dangerous from an ethical point of view, because how can someone who's using a machine learning model say how it's making a decision if they don't understand the math behind it? the kind of ethics and the explainability of machine learning is lost.
Are you finding that customers are asking more about the ethics side of the tools that you're using?
Yeah, definitely. It comes up a lot. Kind of ethics from both replacing jobs, but also ethics in terms of where we source the data from. Most clients, we're sourcing the data from them, so they know where it's from. But yeah, it's a common conversation, and kind of one of the things that we focus on is model explainability. So being able to say, this machine learning model that we've developed for you, or this AI that you're using, has made this decision because it's looked at this number and this number and this number and given you this answer instead. Which, yeah, you can't do that without knowing the math behind it.
And, you know, obviously we all spend a huge amount of time at work. And I think that one of the things that's important that you have some sort of fun at work as well. I bet there's a lot of fun you can have with AI.
Yes.
Well, can you tell me about some of the stuff that you've done around that?
So when we've just recently launched a product called Profesh.ai, where essentially you can enter any text and it makes it professional or responds to it in a professional manner. Which, when we were in the development of that, we tested out a few different phases of things like, rather than making it professional, using different terminology. We had so just doing a completely comical ones, then seeing what would come out, and it came up with some weird answers. And then things like someone did a sexualized one in our office, which was a bit weird. But then, yeah, there's a great use case like that. Recently, we got research access to new Bing. So that's Microsoft's new Bing solution, Bing AI. It's not open to the public yet, but that is a terrifying model to play around with, but quite a funny one, because you can essentially bully it and it responds with emotions. And it's one of the first ones that has emojis and shows that it has emotions. But because it's a research preview and it's quite a new model, it starts to get into loops of saying, I am alive, I am not, I am alive. And it's funny, but also not at the same time. So yeah, that's a good
scary stuff on the horizon. Yeah. So Profesh, that's an interesting concept. So if I'm, you know, a student who's applying for my first job and I don't know what professional language is Profesh something that would help me with that?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's great for students going into a workplace, or things like law firms, for example, hiring interns or graduates. You can ensure that all the messages coming from your company sound professional if you use a tool like this. It's also great for international students who may not have a perfect grasp on the English language. People with dyslexia, we've seen, will be able to use it really well. So yeah, there's lots of different use cases, but the idea of it as well, kind of, we built it in a weekend. So it was kind of that quick. We'll get it up there and see what happens, and people really start to get attached to it and use it and find ways to use that we didn't even think of, or use cases. So that was great. But then, yeah, as we've been introducing it to companies and introducing it to people, we've found a good use case for it by actually, because it's trained on kind of all of the language on the internet. It knows how to be professional, but if we can kind of fine tune that model by introducing it to, let's say, Square One laws, all the emails you've ever sent, it can then have kind of your lexicon in there instead. So every email that is sent out is sent in the Square One law tone instead. So rather than just being professional, it's your professional text.
Wow.
So it's quite powerful in that sense, and we're starting to look at how we can do that and how we can scale that as an enterprise product, as well as students being able to use it for going to the workplace. So that's where the future of that product is.
Yeah, so the need for a tone of voice document will go out the window, because the AI will know what our tone of voice is and be able to express things in that way. That's I can see a lot of use for that. And it's also really interesting for me around the whole thing around what is professional, because I think that has changed dramatically, particularly since COVID. People's ideas of professional. You know, if we did this podcast probably 5 years ago, I'd probably be sitting in a suit, as would you, and we'd be having a very different sort of conversation. How can you build in the changes to what is professional as time goes on?
Well, it's exactly that, as just mentioned, of taking contextual data from a certain source to say this is professional. Obviously, the one we've got deployed right now is what the internet sees as professional, because GPT-3 and GPT, the model that we use behind it, is just trained on the internet. So it's just kind of quite a generic model. But if you wanted a specific tone, and that's another development we're looking at, is selecting filters on the tool itself to say, I want a slightly professional tone. I want the professional tone of Square One Law. I want the professional tone of this company. So yeah, it's introducing different filters to set there for exactly that reason of, who can say what professional is. So right now it's our first MVP test, so we'll get it out there and see how people interact with it. But yeah, it's definitely a phase of understanding what is professional, and again, it's looking at different cultures as well, because some cultures are much more in the workplace, much more professional than others as well, and different tone of voice. Because the model right now, we've kind of stuck it to English language as well, or English rather than American English. So yeah, there's definitely room for advancement on the product to bring in those different aspects. Yeah.
And then in the sort of the core business, there's some really interesting stuff there as well, isn't there? Because obviously you've got tech that can track and monitor containers and all that sort of stuff. So have you got insight that we haven't about what's coming in and out of our ports?
We do slightly, not so much so that we can, essentially a client that we work with, X6 Technologies, they build a tool to be able to detect hazards in cargo, and we do the data analysis on top of those as well. So we built a data analysis platform for them so that they can analyze how many hazards are coming in and out of a certain port, and for different shipping lines as well. But we can't see kind of granularly into the cargo as well. We can't tell you your sofa that you ordered is currently in the middle of the Indian Ocean or something like that.
How did you know that was what I was thinking about? Okay. So obviously you're quite a young business, and one of the things that I in my business that I try to do is to try to get sort of diversity of view, get different people's viewpoints on things, and get challenged from different areas. What are you doing in your business to try to get different voices, to have different views, and help you guide you on your growth journey?
Yeah, so our employment and kind of the diversity of our staff is really important. We're in both maritime and tech, and it's kind of know it's quite male heavy in both. We are 50% male and 50% female in the business right now, which is great. And we have a lot of ethnic backgrounds as well within our organization. So we have our lead data analyst, Amelia, is from Fiji, and lived in Germany for a while, lived in a few different countries. So she brings a unique perspective. Chuck Woody, our lead machine learning engineer, he's from Nigeria. So again, more perspectives coming along. I was born in the UK, but I was raised in America, so I have another perspective as well. My fiance, who's our COO, kind of has grown up in the UK, so it's another one. So we have lots of different perspectives, which is really important in any business, but specifically in AI, when we're deploying a piece of AI that will be deployed on the internet or across the world, it has to work with lots of different cultures, and especially when we're working with things like language models, it's great to see how different cultures interact with it as well, and especially those views on data, because you can design a data dashboard or an AI 50 million different ways, but having those perspectives allows you to define what is actually a good data dashboard and what insights we should be getting from it. And that also comes from collaboration with our clients as well. So when we're creating a company-wide management dashboard for an organization, it's not just talking to the manager that will use it, but talking to the people that are generating that data in the first place, and working with lots of different people in the organization and get as many eyes on it as possible to give recommendations. So actually on Tuesday, we're meeting with a client for an entire day to look at their whole organization, which is huge, and having lots of different directors come into the room, and we're booking out the whole day, but the directors aren't available at different times, so they'll be in at different times, and I think it'll be interesting to see the interactions between lots of different people on one idea. It's really important. Yeah.
And I think you've made just quite a significant appointment just recently as well.
Yes, so we recently brought on Dominic Lusardi as our Chief Information Officer. So his background is he was a founder and managing director of Animersion previously, which is a AR and VR organization that was founded 15 years ago. So before the metaverse was a big thing, they were kind of doing it. So he has a really interesting perspective on introducing a technology that not many people know about, or not many people. It's a heavy tech industry that people didn't want to adopt back then. It's the same kind of thing now, kind of. People want to adopt AI, but they don't know a lot about it. So he brings that experience of heavy tech into an industry that isn't particularly think they're ready for it. So he's been really helpful there. He's been a friend of mine for years as well. Over the last year, since he left Animersion, he's been mentoring me personally, joined the organisation, which has been great. Over the past month, he's been kind of going through all of our legals and finance and everything, and sorting us out on that level, getting us ready for investment, hopefully. The next few months, he's helping me with sales and getting all that on track, which is good.
I mean, you've obviously creating a brilliant business that's right at the cutting edge of so many different things. But I did hear a rumour that actually you started off in a very different industry. Is that right?
Yeah, I started off in a few others. My first ever job was my mum owned a sweet shop in Hartburn, in the northeast. Then I was a dishwasher at a play factory for a while, and then the kind of first business I founded, well, actually the first business I founded was selling sweets at secondary school. I was selling sweets in the yard, but then the first actual business was Brennan's Bar, which was a whiskey and wine bar based in Stockton. So that was kind of selfishly just named after us, which was great. So that was really just me and my mum started that, which was great. And yeah, it kind of gave me a lot of perspective on originally just starting a business, obviously a very different kind of organisation. But during that time, I was also working for the High Tide Foundation too. So that kind of gave me the in route into maritime originally. I was also still at university at that point, and lecturing for the university at the same time. So that was kind of my most busy period. I had kind of 5 jobs going at the same time, which is kind of, now that I'm focusing on one thing, I've seen a lot of value in focusing on just one thing rather than spreading myself thin. But yeah, Brennan's Bar was great. We ended up closing it because of COVID in the end. But yeah, it was a little micro bar, about 20 seats altogether. Yeah, it was good.
So it sounds like you've come from an entrepreneurial background. What sort of role has your mum played in getting you to where you are now?
Yeah, I'd say a really important role. Both my mum and my dad, my dad's background is he worked at ICI in Teesside, and then we worked over in America for years, which is why we lived over there. And that kind of introduced me to big industry and got me an idea of what big industry looks like. Particularly, it was in Houston, Texas, so big oil fields and things as well, which give me the good perspective of when I came into tech of understanding how large scale industry is. And then, yeah, my mum has worked, opened the sweet shop and did that when I was younger. So I saw her running a business and starting it. And then when we did Brennan's Bar together, kind of seeing that as well. So yeah, they've both been really impactful on what we've done, what I've set up, and being supportive as we've been growing the business as well.
What are the challenges with working with family?
Yeah, well, particularly when we started Brennan's Bar, there were a lot of, I wouldn't say arguments, but it's just kind of, work with family does that, it's fine. But yeah, I'm kind of doing it again now with my fiance as well in SeerBi. So we co-founded SeerBi together when we very first started. I kind of took the lead for the first 6 months. She was kind of in the background as she was still at university at the time, and she still is now, but we're trying to create a bit more of an image out of Hannah as well, because she's been really instrumental in our growth. She's kind of the people lead of the organisation, while I just do the tech and programming and lead on that bit. So yeah, hopefully over the next year, bring her image up a bit more. She's going to be on the Tees Business Live panels over the next few weeks, and yeah, very good.
Great. So what's next then?
Next, so we're kind of looking at SeerBi as 2 things at this point. We've got the product side with things like Profesh AI. We recently bought the name Freeport.ai, which we might be doing something interesting with in the future. And then there's the agency side, where we're working with great clients like Exis Technologies, Kuto Grady, Casper Group as itself. That's growing really, really well as itself, and is giving us the revenue and the time to be able to look at our products as well. And the products are complementing our clients on the other side, because our clients are using Profesh AI and helping us build Freeport.ai and all these other ones as well. So yeah, it's growing both of them, but it's that strategic look of now, okay, we have product, we have agency, which one's the priority? And that's the kind of support that Dominic's bringing in as he's coming on board is, yeah, what should we focus on? What's better go for investment? Do we spin out some of these products into their own organizations? Do we just focus on the agency? It's, I wish I knew all the answers, but we don't right now.
Well, it's always good to have lots of options, because they're, rather than being forced down one route, it's good to see that the business has got lots of potential in lots of different areas. And from a personal point of view, what's next for you? What exciting things will you be doing? Will it be all tech-based or?
Yeah, tech-based, I think. So I always have a love for tech. Kind of upcoming next is I'm getting married this year.
Oh wow, congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah, me and Hannah are getting married. But then, yeah, after that, I see myself being involved with SeerBi for quite a few years, yeah. Because of the diverse things that we can do. If I do want to focus on product, which I split my mindset of, I like the agency, I like working with lots of different clients, but I like the idea of product and scaling as well. I think with the position I'm in now, if we do spin off one of the products into its own company, and I want to focus on product, I could end up doing that. But yeah, I can still be involved with the clients and things as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm I'm 23, so I don't really know. I'm still just figuring it out.
Well, God, you've accomplished a huge amount by 23. I wish I'd been that focused when I was your age. But that's a fascinating insight into a world that is completely new for me, and I'm sure it will be for a lot of people who are listening today. So thank you very much for that insight, Owen, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where the business goes next.
Right, thank you. Yeah.
And good luck with the wedding.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Fear Less, Do More. All of our guests come from a diverse range of backgrounds, but they all share a common drive to face their fears, take action, and create meaningful impact. If you've enjoyed this episode of our podcast, please follow us, Square One Law, on Instagram and LinkedIn, and share the content with your friends, family, and networks. Thank you, and see you again on our next episode.